Hi, Michael A. Smith here again for our third storytelling session regarding our murder mystery story Secrets based on my published novel. To recap, Frank Montgomery's neighbor, Vernon Ritchie, was killed in a field not far from the subdivision where they live. He was run over by a car and he was stabbed. Frank was on the scene to learn the details, one of which was that the killer walked away in the direction of their subdivision. His wife, Lois, had been out walking in the rain at the very time of the homicide. So Frank's a newspaper reporter for the Herald, and he's out and about in the community every day completing his assignments. So the next day, on Monday, following the Saturday night homicide, he stops in at Vernon Ritchie's real estate office, which is closed, and there's crime scene yellow tape closing off the office, but Frank ignores that and goes inside, where he finds Sheriff's Office Chief of Detectives Paul Murray. And Frank says, "What's up, Fatso?" And Murray says, "That's Chief of Detectives Paul Murray to you, Scribbler." He says it gruffly, but in fact he and Frank are fairly good friends. They just have an adversarial relationship due to the nature of news reporting and law enforcement. But he says to Frank, off the record, we've discovered a blood trail here in Vernon's office. It looked like he may have been struck here, knocked unconscious perhaps, drugged down the back steps, placed in the trunk of his car. None of that is for attribution, just background for you, Frank. Frank says, "What else have you found?" "Well, as you imagine," Murray said, "there's a lot of fingerprints in here from customers, but we're going to run them all against our criminal database and see what we turn up." He said, "We would review the video footage from the surveillance camera in the parking lot, but it was broken." He said, "I assume that wasn't an accident." "Anything else?" Frank says. And Murray says, "This is a one-way street, Frank. I know that you're looking into this. I assume you've talked to people in the neighborhood. Let's have a quid pro quo here. What have you learned?" And Frank says, "Well, Vernon was having some real estate financial problems. They may involve one of our neighbors who was an investor. Potentially he stands to lose some money, but it doesn't seem to me like he's a viable candidate to be a murderer." Then Murray says, "Well, there's only one other clue." He said, "We did follow a trail of footprints and it leads into your subdivision, Frank. So it's possible that one of your neighbors is a murderer." Well, Frank doesn't mention that his wife Lois was out in the middle of the night. He's going to keep that to himself for a while. So his next stop is in the county courthouse at the Recorder of Deeds, where he looks up the property owned by Vernon Ritchie, which not only includes his home in the Lakeview subdivision as well as his subdivision, but he owns a rental property which is actually a duplex on the south side of the city. So Frank decides to take a run up there and look at this property, maybe talk to the renters, see if they know anything. He gets up there and he parks on the street, and before he can get out of the car, two women come out of one side of the duplex, and they're angry, obviously. They're arguing with each other. One of them is Lois, Frank's wife, and the other is Kathy Iverson, who is a school teacher who lives 2 houses down from the Ritchies in the Lakeview subdivision. The argument continues as Frank watches, and Lois winds up and slaps Kathy Iverson very hard, and then goes and gets in her car and takes off. At this point, Frank does get out and walks up to Kathy and says, "Kathy, what is going on here?" And Kathy, a tall, blonde school teacher, looks at Frank and smiles and said, "Hey, Lois has got a hell of a right cross." And Frank says, "Well, why did she slap you?" And Kathy looks at him and smiles, and she said, "Because this duplex was Vernon's little love nest. I had just stopped by to pick up some personal belongings because I didn't want Shirley to discover them if she doesn't know about us in the first place. But she said apparently Lois didn't know about me, nor the other women that Vernon brought here. So then Kathy leaves. Frank is stunned. He didn't know anything about this love relationship that Vernon apparently have. In fact, he finds it amazing because he always thought of Vernon as sort of a stodgy, conservative businessman. So at this point, you want to tune in for the next storytelling session regarding secrets, because in that one, Frank is going to confront his wife Lois. Expect some fireworks. Thanks for listening in. I'm Michael A. Smith.